So I'm sorry about the technical difficulties getting started, but if any of you don't have the text in front of you, read it all out loud, and hopefully everyone will be able to follow. So it's nice to be with you all again. It's nice to be in person with some of you. This is the first one that I've done in person. It's crazy to think about that. So I'm happy to be here and happy to have you all with me. So for those of you who have been to past sessions or have been following along, we've been working our way through the matriarchs, trying to take a bit of a deeper look into who they were and what their lives were like. And now tonight, we're going to be focusing on Rachel and Leah. So I think that these two women and their story is maybe the most emotional and most compelling out of all of the matriarchs and the conversations that we've had so far. And I hope that our time together tonight will shed a bit of light on them for you as well. And then at the end, you can let me know what you think. So before we get started, I just want to catch us up to where we are now. So if you remember when we finished with Rebecca, she had just kind of orchestrated the switch in the blessings between her two children. And once that happened, the way that we finished our learning and our understanding is that she kind of got everybody to a point where they got what they needed, and everyone was able to kind of, I don't know, feel satisfied in what they needed and what they wanted, and she was able to rectify that whole situation in a way that people were satisfied and feeling respected. She sends Jacob away because she knows that Esav might want to retaliate against what happens, so she sends him away. We have kind of an interlude of what we just read in last week's Parsha, where he's in the desert, and he has the dream with the ladder, and then this is where we pick up when he comes to his uncle Lavan's house in Haran, and he meets Rachel. Before we start, though, I want to just read this first text so that we can kind of contextualize and understand why this story is particularly important and the kind of the vein, the way that we're going to be looking at it tonight. So does anyone not have the source sheet open in front of them? Everyone was able to get it?
I granted viewer access to everyone that sent a request.
Great, thank you. So does anybody want to read the Nora Gold text, the first text that we have, either in person or online?
I'll read it.
Okay.
The story of Rachel and Leah is unique because it is the only example in the Torah of two sisters in relationship. So the Rachel-Leah story is quintessential sister narrative in contrast to all the brother narratives in the Torah, and as such is crucial to our understanding of how the Torah views sisters, and by extension, sisterhood. And many like me have been troubled by the portrayal of the relationship between Rachel and Leah as being basically one of rivalry of two young women, or of two women fighting over a man, sisters yet no sisterhood.
Okay. So first of all, I think that's crazy that we don't have any other stories of sisters. Think of all the brothers that we've already, even to just this point in the Bible, that we've met. Some of them have good relationships. Some of them have contentious relationships. Some of them murder each other. But whatever it is, we have been exposed to brothers in relationship, and we will continue to be exposed to brothers in relationships. But this is the only time that we have sisters together. And because women have not much time or text devoted to them. And because every word in the Torah is so important and we parse every single word that we hear or that's written, we have to look very deeply into what we learn about these two women. But what I want us to do tonight is challenge this last sentence where, and she's saying it, Nora Gold is saying that she's troubled by the portrayal of this relationship, but I want us to challenge our assumptions and our prior knowledge of what these two women are, how they relate to each other. So before we can do that, let's just take stock of what we know about them, right? So who we know, they are sisters, right? What else do we know about them? What else do they have in common?
They love the same man.
They are married to the same man, right? Do we know anything else about them? Rachel and Leah, do we know, were you saying something, Mark? What do we know anything else about kind of how Jacob relates to them?
I think Rachel was favored and she was described as more physically attractive.
Right, yes. So we know that Rachel was the favorite wife, right? We know that she was beautiful. So, you know, already we're kind of seeing how the Torah is portraying them. And it's what, at least Rachel, and what's important for us to remember all the time when we're reading the Torah, when we're reading anything, is that it is reflective of the times that it's talking about, right? So it's told from a male perspective. We know a lot more about the male characters in the Torah than we do about the women, and everything that we think and everything that the way that we talk about it, even if we don't realize that or it's subconscious, the way that we think about these stories comes from a perspective of the male perspective. And also we tend to not really challenge the way that we were taught these stories as kids. And sometimes that's the only way that we ever know about these stories or relate to them, right? So, you know, sisters being married to the same man. Oh, well, I guess maybe that happened at the time. Okay. There was a favorite wife. She was pretty. Okay, I guess that's, you know, fact, and that's an important thing that we need to know about her. But then we kind of, if we don't take the time to look at it again as adults on a deeper level, we're kind of left with that basic information. And when we dig back and try to recall what we have learned, we come up with kind of that very basic, superficial understanding and not necessarily thinking about what these stories are telling us and who these people were and what these experiences were like for them. And so that's really what I want us to do right now. So any other reactions to the Nora Gold text?
I guess more to what you said, the surface level of what we're taught, and even just the story of them is the story of jealousy and deceit,
right,
and lying, if you will, with the veil,
and fighting over a man.
Yeah.
Just about a man.
It's just from Eve to Rachel and Leah, really, it's just that women are just good for one thing, and it's temptation, really, right? So,
and having babies.
yeah, well,
They're good for having babies. And we'll see that here for sure as well. But let's just fast forward to where we find ourselves in the text, and we have a bit of a meet cute between Jacob and Rachel. So we're back at the well, which is where we met Rebecca when we were doing that story. So Jacob is making his way through the desert to go live with his uncle Lavan, and he comes to a well. and there are people kind of gathering at the well. They all get together at the same time because the well is blocked by a giant rock that is very heavy and hard to move. So everybody, there's a watering time, right? And everybody comes to the well at that time. Then a bunch of people move the rock together. They give their animals water. They do what they need to do, and then they put the rock back on the well and they leave. So he gets there, and Rachel, we learn.
Anybody here?
No, I don't hear them.
He is able to go up to this giant rock. Is that us?
Talia,
Yeah.
We lost you.
we lost you for about 30 seconds there, right after Rachel went up to Rachel went to the well.
I'll tell about about Jacob looking at her.
Sorry.
Okay, so Jacob sees her, right? Jacob sees Rachel at the well, and he is smitten head over heels, and to the point where he is able to go to the well and move the rock by himself. So superhuman strength, because he sees this woman, then he then he takes her and he kisses her, and he goes and he finds, he goes to get Lavan, right? Goes to see his uncle. And this is where we pick up. So before we pick up, I just want to ask, are people familiar? Have people heard the terms pshat and drash? Okay. So that
Ugh. You're frozen again.
Maybe less people in the building should be on Wi-Fi so we can get a better signal. That would be my recommendation.
It takes less bandwidth.
but they want
Oh.
to see.
Well, do you
Are
want
we
them to
back?
Hear you? Or do you want
Yes,
them-
you're back.
If we go out again, you guys just start raising your hands.
Yeah, because we don't know. Okay.
Oh, you can see us? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry about this.
Oh, no, not your fault. Thank
Okay.
you.
So I was talking about the difference between pshat and drash. So a pshat understanding of the text is just when you read the actual words of the Torah and you're kind of taking a simple, straightforward understanding of what's written in the Torah. And the drash, like the word midrash, is when you take a deeper understanding, maybe you're reading a commentary or whatever it is. So while we have a lot of drash tonight, so some contemporary and also ancient midrashim commentaries, we're going to be doing a bunch of looking at the text. So some pshat understanding, but trying to make our own observations and understandings from just the text, because I think what I want us to focus on and what we're going to get to is, at least for me, was something that a couple years ago, I took a class on this. And before I had taken this class, I just never knew this part of the Torah. I never learned it. It was never taught to me. And I want to spend some significant time just looking at the text and getting kind of our reactions to that. Okay. So we'll start with the first Genesis quote. So I'll read it. Now Lavan had two daughters. Remember, Lavan is Jacob's uncle. The name of the older one was Leah, and the name of the younger one was Rachel. Leah had sensitive eyes. Rachel was shapely and beautiful. Jacob loved her. He said, I will serve you for 7 years for your younger daughter, Rachel. Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of his love for her. So again, he's just totally head over heels, right? But this is the first mention of these two women, right? So right off the bat, we see that Leah has something going on with her appearance that's noticeable enough that it's written in the Torah. Okay. And then we also see that Rachel was just a knockout, right? And
Does anyone have a brain?
Jacob loved her, right? So what do we see going on here? What is a woman's worth?
Right. There's
Nobody.
like, there's no intellect, like their looks, that's it.
Their looks. There's also, we don't know how Rachel feels about Jacob, but we know that Jacob loves her. And Jacob, when he ran away from home, he left with nothing. So he can't come from a position of power or a position of wealth to try to, make this marriage happen faster. And Lavan, we know, is a wheeler and a dealer. And so he makes this deal that if you're going to have my daughter, you need to work for me for 7 years. And Jacob agrees, right? So I just want to highlight again that right here, our understanding of the relationship between Rachel and Jacob is very one-sided, right? Rachel doesn't have a voice. We don't know how she feels, but we know that she is to marry him, right? But I guess at least she's beautiful. So that's good, right? For her, she has that going on. But I want us to think about what this means that Leah had sensitive eyes. So our rabbis and our commentators they really are trying to find, the best that they can, the best aspects of every single character in the Torah that is, supposed to be a positive character. They do whatever they can to try to help us understand what these words might mean and then, shed it in a positive light. So does anybody want to read the Rashi on Leah had sensitive eyes? Maybe somebody online?
I can. Can you hear me?
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. So Rashi, Leah had sensitive eyes. Leah's eyes are red and weepy from constant crying. The tradition in the family was that Rachel will be matched with Jacob, whereas the elder daughter would marry the elder son. Leah, being the eldest, is set to marry Esau, the other eldest. Leah is a person of great piety. She could not think of anything worse than marrying Esau, a hunting man who does not fear God. She longs to marry Jacob, the God-fearing one, and she has spent her life in tears bemoaning her personal fate. Her tears have made her eyes red and soft.
Thank you so much.
Please
stop
eating my ear.
So this, I think, is a very interesting understanding and interpretation of the idea that she has sensitive eyes, right? So here we're learning something about kind of the societal norms, the cultural expectations at the time. These cousins are going to marry each other. They seemingly have been promised to each other for their whole lives, and they're going to do it in birth order. Now, we know a lot about Jacob and Esau. We know what kind of man
You're back.
Are we
You're
back?
back.
Are we back?
You were saying we know what kind of a man Esau was.
Yeah, we know that he's not the greatest, maybe not the kind of man you would want your daughter marrying, but this doesn't seem to, the reality of the situation doesn't seem to change what has been decided between these families. But how does this, give us context into the story, or maybe shed a little bit of light into the story?
I mean, I guess I don't think I ever knew that Leah was supposed to marry Esau.
Yeah, I didn't know that either
Mhm.
until
I
was
didn't
reading
know
this.
that. Never knew that.
Yeah. But she doesn't want to.
Yeah.
Right. And so maybe she loves Jacob, or maybe she just she feels like they're have more in common. You know, it says that she's a person of great piety, and we know that Jacob is the God-fearing one. She is supposed to marry this hunter, this outdoorsman. You know, it's just he's not her type, but she can't do anything about it, right? So, you know, if we just think about women during this time and how powerless they were, you know, this is just a good example of that, where she can't change her fate, even if she wants to. And she's been crying so much her whole life that it's affected her appearance to the point where we are reading it in the text. So we know that Jacob is to marry Rachel. He's working for her, working off his debt for 7 years. And then we have this next text from the Talmud, from Megillah. Anyone want to read it? One here?
I'll read.
Okay.
Jacob asked Rachel, "Will you marry me?" She answered, "Yes, but my father is a deceiver, and you will not be able to best him." He asked her, "What is his deceit?" Meaning, in what way will he be able to deceive me? She told him, "I have an older sister, and he will not marry me off before her." He said, "I am his brother in deceit." Jacob gave Rachel signs he would be able to recognize her on the wedding night.
Great. Thank you.
Wow, that's a lot.
So say more. Say more.
Like, that's a lot.
Yeah.
His father will marry him off. Her father's gonna marry her off. That's first date.
That terminology is still used these days.
Oh, yeah.
In a lot of
totally.
places,
Yeah.
like
So much.
right? Good Indonesia.
But it's interesting that she
Um,
planted the seed of deceit, saying that her dad was a liar,
Yeah,
but maybe she was the one who actually crafted this so that Leah wouldn't resent her, and maybe this is a sisterhood bond.
Ooh, say more.
Right.
I like this.
Go, go.
Oh, okay.
spin.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Nice.
so she's saying, by the way, my dad's this liar, but Jacob didn't, or Laban didn't come out and say this. She planted the seed, right? So she's like, he'll never marry me off until my sister's married off. Just be careful of him. But if this was really her craftiness, setting this up, maybe she had Leah's back. Maybe she said, "I'm not gonna let you be a spinster. I'm not gonna let you be alone. We're sisters and we need to do this together."
Right.
Hey,
Love
I
that.
that's a nice, that's,
That's fantastic.
Thanks. I'm done. I'll see you later. No, I'm kidding.
Mic drop. right?
Well, you just took that last line of the very first thing we read and changed it to a positive instead of this whole story. being
Well,
set up
depending
as
on
a
who's the
negative.
positive, it's feeding into the narrative that women are spinning something behind everything, right? This is
But
the original seed, right?
in spirit of taking care of her sister.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mark.
There's also the option that they could have had Leah marry Esau and not have any deceit, but there's no discussion. Maybe there's elsewhere that they could have said, you know, she could have encouraged her sister to do that or whatever. I mean, there was another way here that didn't have to be deceitful either, though. But that didn't,
Right.
and that was what should have happened, I guess. So, but that didn't come to pass.
Right. And if you think about it, this is 7 years in the making. You know, I think when my original understanding of this is that it's all happening the night before the wedding, right? Like that's when he's giving her the signs. It's all rushed, but they clearly know who their father is, what kind of man he is. What are they?
I think Pam, are you at a hockey
Are you at a
game right
hockey
now?
game?
That's amazing.
Where is she?
Hi, Pam.
Loves you.
Sorry, that just flashed and it like totally distracted me. I had to say something about it. So
That's devotion.
Yeah, love you, Pam.
So, you know, theoretically, they could have tried to do something about it, right? She's telling Jacob, you know, that this could have been after 6 months, you know, when he's so in love with her. So maybe he, you know, proposed right away, and you know, he knows even from the very beginning that he needs to wait for her for 7 years. So it could have been right away. And she's saying, you know, I know this is my dad. And this is the kind of man he is, and this is how our society works, and these are the ideals that he believes in. And there is ample time to come up with a solution, but they don't. It could have been Esau, it could have been somebody else. Who knows? You know, and Jacob also, who we know is going to be, you know, also a victim of this deceit, could have tried in a different way instead of trying to be, you know, his brother in deceit, could have tried a different way to make this situation a little bit better, but he doesn't. He thinks he can best him, that he can out deceive him. And so they go along with it. The other thing I want to point out, just because this is my experience, and we're talking about, you know, the Peshat and the Drash, is some things when we learn stories and we learn them orally, you know, we don't necessarily know what's written in the text and what's in a midrash that then gets kind of just incorporated into the narrative when it's taught to us. So, you know, this whole idea of Jacob giving Rachel signs before the wedding is not in the Torah, but we know that as part of the story. So it's just interesting, you know, when you learn it, say, oh, you know, that didn't happen in the actual text, but it's become so kind of canonized in that way that it feels like it's part of the original story. That's just a bit of an aside.
Can I also ask a question?
Yeah.
So I feel like with the other matriarchs that we've studied, singular words were used to describe them. Like with Sarah, it was laughter, right? Because she laughed, right? And other things. But this is the first one that kind of does. I feel like this is the most descriptive of any of the females that we've studied that physically, but also like with deceit and with sensitive eyes. The word sensitive, like that's not something that's tangible. If she left, you know, she left. The sensitive is really open to interpretation. It feels like this small bit of these women were meant for the story of women to be told later, that were complicated, but you have to be careful because there's a layer of underlings that happen somewhere, right? But I feel like this is the most descriptive we've had in any female that we've learned about so far.
Yeah, and just wait until a little bit later on, and we'll have even more than that. But the other thing that I think is interesting is in the retelling, right? The way that it gets orally passed down, and the way we even, and you know, I am guilty of this. I know Michael is guilty of this. The way that we tell the stories, we don't include these details. You know, we don't talk about it from, you know, we talk about it from kind of the male perspective and the way that we've learned it. And a lot of the details about the women just kind of get washed away because there's a way that we pass these stories down. And that's just, you know, that's just what it is. And that's why we have to come back and keep learning them again. Okay, so we have the signs, whatever presumably happens at the wedding, they get married, the signs happen, they're married, yay. And then we have this next verse, Genesis 29:25. When morning came, there was Leah.
So what you just said, they're married, yay. That's just what we think.
Right.
Yeah.
The wedding happens.
A wedding
Right? A wedding happens. There's a wedding night, but then in the morning, it's Leah. So like, how? How did that happen? You know, like even with the signs, this is a 7-year-long courtship, right? Presumably they know each other. And then they have this first opportunity to be together, maybe alone, whatever it is. And the only information we get from the text is that the next morning when there's light, it's Leah.
So there was no bedecken, like to lift the veil to check to make sure that.
This is where
the
it
first
comes
introduction
from.
of the veil.
Okay.
There was no veil before this. They put the veil on her to hide her. That's why we have veils today.
That's right.
And that's who puts the veil on, is to make sure that they're veiling
They're
the right
required
person
to
down.
wear the veil when you walk down the aisle?
In Orthodox, sure.
Okay.
But they were
Because of
they were
this.
heavy veils
Okay.
because of this though too. But it's known that they know who they're veiling, right?
Right. And we could say that, this was a custom at the time, that the women of the time were wearing, thick, opaque veils. So you couldn't see the face. That is certainly possible. And the Midrashim go to great lengths to try to explain how this happened. So first we have the signs, right? That's, a Midrash. And then there are Midrashim that say that Rachel was underneath the marital tent, and that any time Leah would have spoken, it was actually Rachel speaking, so that Jacob wouldn't hear a voice that he didn't or a voice that he knows to be Leah, because obviously he knows Leah. He's been living with her for 7 years too.
Well, he did the same thing.
But also, no one's addressing the
Doesn't seem
elephant in
to
the room.
don't
Like,
bother.
he's really stupid. I'm sorry, he's dumb. Dumb, strong man. Blah, 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 blah. Like, but they didn't have to say it. So, like, how dumb are you? You're dumb. Sorry.
Probably drunk. They get him drunk.
Yeah.
Maybe, or maybe he's just, nervous. I don't know. I don't know. So what I want us to do for a minute is I want us to think about all three of them. And I want us to put ourselves in their shoes. And what do you think their reaction was? What are they feeling right now? When morning came, there was Leah. I mean, who I want somebody to take it. Put yourself in Leah's shoes. You're Leah. You just tricked a man into marrying you who's supposed to marry your sister, and he just finds out that he actually married you. What is your experience? What's your emotional experience right now?
Well, it depends what kind of person I am.
You're a person of great piety.
That's what it says right here.
And you have very sensitive eyes.
And you, because you've been
And
crying.
you cry a lot.
So
Over
I'm-
Jacob.
So if I'm pious, I'm thinking, well, I'm just following the birthright. I'm just
Okay.
following,
Nothing.
I've done nothing wrong because this is the order of things as our ancestors said it was.
And what if you're human?
Then
If you're human, I'm thinking, God, I'm sloppy seconds. I'm sloppy seconds.
I'm sloppy.
Yeah, and you feel guilty and you're worried about what's going to happen and
Right.
what
If
if
he
you know,
is he gonna
how-
beat me? Is what's gonna happen?
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Somebody online, what is Rachel's experience right now? How is she reacting to this?
Yeah, I didn't have.
Yeah,
Mark.
Mark.
Whether she's complicit or not, the one observation I make in terms of Rachel is she was willing to do this for her sister or go whatever. But on the other hand, Leah was not willing to do it for her. Leah could have said, I know you love him. I'm not going to, put you through this. Let it be. So I guess what I'm saying is she wasn't as good a sister to Rachel as Rachel was to her in that perspective.
Okay.
Oh, that might be just a judgment call if she's just being a rule follower.
Yeah.
Well, but she's supposed to marry Esau. She didn't follow that rule. So she's not so
Right,
perfect
right.
about that.
Right.
But I kind of feel like the women in that time, they needed each other and they depend on each other. And so it's like sister wives these days. I don't know, like they have each other and they have their sister relationship. And you leave your father's house and you're off with this man and you don't know what's going to happen. And maybe it was good for Rachel too, because she's like, okay, I'm going to have my sister with me.
Right.
I take care of her. And maybe it wasn't that hard of a thing for her to do. I don't know. In the
Or
beginning.
maybe, if we think about Rachel is beautiful, Leah is not.
She has good eyes.
All we know is she's good eyes.
She's sensitive eyes.
Sensitive eyes.
This could have been and must have been humiliating for Leah,
Yeah.
right? That if this is the way it goes, the older sister gets married first. Here we have this man who is willing to work and wait for 7 years for the younger sister. And meanwhile, she has no prospects. Nothing else is happening to her, for her. Maybe, maybe Rachel feels bad for her. Maybe she feels like she owes her older sister this. There's this other midrash that I wanted to mention before that I forgot to mention, that throughout the 7 years, Jacob had been bringing gifts for Rachel, giving them to Lavan to give to Rachel. And they all know this, right? They're all living in close proximity. And Lavan takes the gifts meant for Rachel and gives them to Leah. So, when I hear that, and I think, Lavan this whole time is trying to orchestrate something. He's not being particularly sly about it. He's hurting his children in the process. That could not have felt good for Rachel or for Leah. That he's trying to orchestrate this love that's not there, while maybe denying a love that could be there from forming. What about, you have a question, Rachel? Yes, Rachel, thank you.
Well, it's not so much a question, but it's more, I feel more like he was using his daughter and, well, really using Jacob to kind of marry off his oldest daughter. Basically, I mean, giving her, the gifts and like you were saying, and, putting her in this place where she wasn't having to marry this man that she didn't even want to marry in the first place. He's like, here, I'll give you all of these things. And then, we'll worry about Rachel later. It's just, like you're saying, he kind of ruined his children's lives and just didn't really seem to care, I don't know. It was just very interesting, kind of, because I think the men, obviously, the fathers, especially then, were the ones who really had the say. I don't think that Rachel or Leah were worse to each other or better to each, one or the other. I think it all had to do with their father trying to do what he thought he needed to do to, I guess, probably stick to societal, norms, I'm guessing.
Right.
Anyway.
Do you have any brothers? Or is it just the
We don't
two?
hear about it.
Okay.
We don't know.
Just the daughters.
What about Jacob? What do you think Jacob's reaction is to this?
Jacob tricked his own father.
Hmm.
I mean,
He
yeah,
does
this
say,
is-
I am his brother in deceit.
Yeah, I mean, like, he's no above board citizen either at some point,
Richie.
Yeah, Richie.
Isn't there a midrash about Leah answering back the morning after saying I learned from you, but we learned from you because you tricked your father? I think I forgot who wrote it. There's a midrash.
So there you go. That's exactly what Mercy was just saying. So yeah, thank you.
I mean, was it culturally appropriate to just be dishonest?
I don't know.
We didn't have the 10 Commandments yet, so, maybe, and there are some cultures that are based on dishonesty. We all know them.
I mean, we don't have a precedent for that in the text. Like, besides what just happened, we don't see that, so I don't know. Maybe, but I don't know.
Or maybe it's just Lavan said, as Rachel said, culture, the societal norms were that you had to marry the older one off first. And what would that do to his status in the community? Would he, lose his share of crops or sheep, or would he lose face in whatever social circles he ran?
Yeah.
Because he didn't marry the older one off first.
Yeah, we don't know.
Well, and the other thing is, he wanted Rachel more than she wanted him. He talks about his love and lust for her and how beautiful she was. She doesn't say anything about him. She's not like, Dad, I have to marry this guy. It's like, no,
Yeah, she
my
was
sister first.
jealous of Leah getting there first.
And how do you think this would affect the way that Jacob relates to these women?
Trust is an issue, right?
Huge trust issue.
Right? Yeah. And we will see that play out. So now we're on
Or
the,
maybe he sees it as a transaction just as much.
I put it up here. Okay, I'm sorry. I put this in your business. You want to take one back to your.
Is it frozen?
I'll read. Okay.
You're back.
Rachel had given her the signs
To me.
Jacob did not know until the morning that they had switched. According to the rabbis, Lavan would not have succeeded in deceiving Jacob without Rachel's involvement. Rachel had to choose between her love for Jacob and her compassion for her sister, and she decided in favor of the latter.
Okay. So, if we go back to the Nora Gold text, and talking about how this relationship could be kind of the archetype for how we understand sisterhood, then I really like this reading of it. That, if Rachel had to choose, she does not choose herself, she chooses her sister, right? She's talking about she could have chosen her love for Jacob. So that I see as herself, right? And what she wants. But she chooses her sister. She puts her sister above her.
But there's no reference to the fact that Rachel loves Jacob beforehand.
Right.
No.
So you don't know that to be true that she loves him.
Right. This is this woman's understanding, right? So maybe it's more selfish than that. Maybe she's trying to get herself out of this. Who knows? We don't know that, we could only speculate. But I mean, we have to think about, we are only introduced to these women when Jacob comes into their world, right? So we don't know anything about them as kids, growing up, what their relationship was like. We do know that there is no mention of anybody else in the family. There's no mention of a mother. So, some of the commentators believe that the mother had passed away and that Leah was really heading the household in that way, maybe even acting, as the mother figure in Rachel's life. So if we think about their history, then there's a lot of context. There's a lot of baggage, going into this. We can't just look at it and say, it was supposed to be a certain way and there was some trickery involved and now it's a different way. These women are taking control of their own experiences, of their own lives, of what's happening. So, what if Rachel felt that there was no way, it was disrespectful, she could not get married before Leah? Maybe because she loves Leah, she respects Leah. Leah is a, big sister / maternal figure, and for her to be married before her is just something that Rachel couldn't stomach, to the point where she is willing to give up her chance of marrying Jacob, as she probably thinks in this moment, so that Leah can be the one that gets married first and can have this position of respect. Yes, Richie.
If we go back a generation though, Laban has changed face so much because with his own sister, they went ahead and asked her if she was willing to go away with Eliezer. And here, I don't know how many years passed, but he's already changed his whole attitude and his whole act.
Yeah.
That he's tricking somebody, not letting the women have their own say.
Right. Right, because that's very, with Rebecca. So what she's talking about is, before Rebecca is sent off to marry Isaac, her father and her brother Lavan take her to the side and they say, do you want to go? Do you want to go marry this man? And that is striking, because they're giving Rebecca the choice. Especially there, she's being offered, they're being offered a lot of riches and wealth for her in exchange for her, and they seemingly would have given it up if she had said she didn't want to go. And here we're in a totally different situation. so yeah, that's a very interesting transformation for Lavan, and we don't know what happened to him in the intervening years that would have made him change or act this way. But yeah, that's this is where we find ourselves now. So after he marries Leah, and he finds out that it's Leah, he goes to Lavan and he says, you know, what is happening? I worked for 7 years for Rachel, but instead I married Leah. And so Lavan says, just wait a week, wait until all of the wedding celebrations are finished, and then you can marry Rachel, and you'll work another 7 years for me to pay off that debt for that woman. So that's what happens. So again, if we think about these women and their situations and their feelings, Leah just gets married. She marries the man she wanted to marry, right? And then he complains because he didn't want to marry her. And a week later, he marries her sister. Then we come to what I think is some of the most compelling text in the Torah. So if you look at the source sheets, they're color coded. So what I want us to do first is I want us to read through this big block of text. And I know that it's a big block of text, but first I want us to read it together, and I want us to kind of take on parts. So if I can have 4 volunteers, and if we have a 5th, that person could be the narrator, or I can be the narrator. And then after we read it, I would just like you to take a minute and look over it again on your own, just to kind of digest what is happening here. So who would like to read the red sections, which are the sections that represent Leah's experience?
Sure.
Okay, Shani. Does anybody want to be the narrator? That's the text in black. Anyone online?
I'll do whatever.
Okay,
I-
so
Jackie's raising her hand.
Uh,
Ja-
Bonnie, I think. so.
Bonnie?
I can read the black.
Okay, you read the black, thank you. Who would like to read the green?
I can read the green.
Okay, Ashley's going to read the green. Who would like to read the yellow?
There's yellow, too.
It's kind of orange.
Orangish.
Oranges.
Orange.
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 It's
From
line
New Jersey.
10, 11, 12, 13 are the ones.
My northern friend.
Anybody want to read the orange?
Orange.
I'll do that.
Okay, Beth has the orange. And then who would like to read the blue on the back? There's blue.
Richie raised her hand, I think. Richie, you willing?
Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
Up,
Yes.
they froze. Thank you, they froze.
Aye. We're lost.
Technology is not always
So
what
we'll lose them.
we want.
Very
Okay,
good.
here we go. Okay, we're
Richie-
back.
Richie volunteered to do blue before we lost you, but whatever.
That, nothing happened since then.
That's
You're
great.
good.
Okay,
Okay, great.
the
Thank
so
you.
volunteer.
Bonnie
Sorry.
is black.
All right,
Shani is red. I'm just going over. Remind me who's green?
Me.
Ashley is green. Who is
Richie's blue.
orange? Beth is
Richie.
orange,
Oh.
and Richie is blue.
Just tell me how to say this person's name.
Bilha.
Bill.
Okay, so Bonnie, take
start.
it away, please.
all right. When the Lord saw that Leah was unloved, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren.
Okay, so let me just interrupt you for 1 second. Sorry. So this is, again, we're getting 2 kind of pieces of information about these women. Leah is unloved, which people have interpreted also as that she was hated, right? She was the hated wife. And Rachel was barren. So Rachel is the one that kind of has these tropes that we keep seeing from matriarch to matriarch, right? She has a meet cute at the well, and then also which we saw previously with Rebecca, and she's barren, like Sarah and Rebecca as well. So these, I mean, you know, back to when we were putting ourselves in these characters' shoes, we can understand why it might not be kind, but we can understand why Jacob would have hard feelings towards Leah, right? She is not who he wanted. He finds himself married to her, and he has no options.
He has to work 7 more years.
And he has to work 7 more years to marry the one that he wants to marry. And no matter what, even if he gets the woman of his dreams, he is still now in a very uncomfortable position for the rest of his life, being married to 2 sisters, having a father-in-law that tricked him. And then also, he must know that the only person who had the signs was Rachel, so that if Leah had the signs, Rachel must have given it to him. This is a very complicated situation for all of them. Mark, what did you want to say?
It's interesting for that one line that she's unloved by Jacob, but she's clearly loved by her sister and her father because of all they did. And yet from this line, God seems to not count that because he's, making her fertile. So that was interesting to me in both ways. She is loved, and that doesn't seem to matter. God's still sympathetic to her.
Right. Okay, thank you. And Richie, thank you for the Hebrew.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we are on to
Leah.
Leah.
Leah conceived and bore a son, and she named him Reuben. For she said, because the Lord has looked on my affliction, surely now my husband will love me. She conceived again and bore a son, and she said, because the Lord has heard that I am hated, he has given me this son also. And she named him Simeon. Again, she conceived and bore a son, and said, now this time my husband will be joined to me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore he was named Levi. She conceived again and bore a son, and said, this time I will praise the Lord. Therefore she named him Judah. Then she ceased bearing.
When Rachel saw that she bore Jacob no children, she envied her sister, and she said to Jacob, give me children or I shall die. Jacob became very angry with Rachel and said, am I in the place of God, who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb? Then she said, here is my maid Bilhah, go into her, that she may bear upon my knees, and that I too may have children through her. So she gave him her maid Bilhah as a wife, and Jacob went into her.
And Bilhah conceived and bore Jacob a son. Then Rachel said, God has judged me and also heard my voice and given me a son. Therefore she named him Dan. Rachel's maid Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. Then Rachel said, with mighty wrestlings I have wrestled with my sister and have prevailed. So she named him Naphtali. Well, that is.
When Leah saw that she had ceased bearing children, she took her maid Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife.
Then Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a son, and Leah
Wow.
said, good fortune. So she named him Gad. Leah's maid Zilpah bore Jacob a second son, and Leah said, happy am I, for the women will call me happy. So she named him Asher.
In the days of wheat harvest, Reuben went and found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother Leah. Then Rachel said to Leah, please give me some of your son's mandrakes.
Let
But
me
she
interrupt you
said,
for a second.
yes, I don't know what I mean.
Mandrakes are supposed to have like help women be fertile. They're supposed to have those kinds of properties, which is what we're seeing here now.
So it's some
Okay.
kind of a vegetable or something. Okay.
Yes.
But she said to her, is it a small matter that you have taken away my husband? Would you take away my son's mandrakes also? Rachel said, then he may lie with you tonight for your son's mandrakes. When Jacob came from the field in the evening, Leah went out to meet him and said, you must come into me, for I have hired you with my son's mandrakes. So he lay with her that night. What are mandrakes? So I don't understand.
Mandrakes it's some sort of like root.
Kind of
It's a
plant.
nightshade. I looked it up.
It's a glorified potato
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
supposed to be super fertile. make
pretty.
notes.
Okay,
Supposed to be pretty.
Oh, it's pretty too.
Okay,
now it's
Keep it there.
Just white.
Red.
purple.
now it's Donnie.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. Forgot ours, right?
And God heeded Leah, and she conceived and bore Jacob a fifth son.
wow.
Leah said, God has given me my hire because I gave my maid to my husband. So she named him Issachar. And Leah conceived again, and she bore Jacob a sixth son. Then Leah said, God has endowed me with a good dowry. Now my husband will honor me because I have borne him 6 sons. And so she named him Zebulun. Afterwards, she bore a daughter and named her Dinah.
Then God remembered Rachel, and God heeded her and opened her womb. She conceived and bore a son and said, God has taken away my reproach. And she named him Joseph, saying, may the Lord add to me another son.
Okay, thank you for
Right, baby child.
all of my readers. So this is a lot on a lot of different levels. First, a lot of text, but also there is a lot going on in here, a lot of emotion. We know that Jacob has 12 sons, right? We're not reading here about Benjamin because that happens a little bit later on. So this is the birth of Bnei Israel, right? The children of Israel. And we don't typically learn what goes into their names. I think a bit of it is lost in the translation because we're not, understanding the Hebrew words and how those are kind of speaking to the women and what they're thinking in them at the moment and what they're experiencing at the moment. But the names are very charged. It's one right after the other. And there is just all of them. There are 5 people in this narrative, right? Jacob, and then the 4 women that are each kind of go through their own very significant emotional experience, some that we have to read into and some that are here on the page for us to see. But I want, before I say whatever it is I have to say, I would just like to take a couple minutes for you to read it again on your own and just, if you see something that you want to talk about or something you want to bring up, because we could spend the next 3 hours, I think, on just these verses. But I want to address what's interesting to you and what strikes you. So just take a minute, read it again, and then we'll come back together. All right. Does anybody need more time or are we good?
So I'm assuming this was a typical arrangement
The
that
the maids?
the maids. So are the maids Jewish?
No. Oh, yeah. And so isn't Bill Hansilpa the
They were Egyptian.
Ethiopian
Sorry.
tribe?
Like a surrogate.
So they were the surrogates,
Except for they were.
But it was no different than with um, Rebecca and Sarah when,
Hagar with
Yeah.
Hagar.
Right. I was thinking of that too.
but we're so strict in our maternal
Now,
lineage.
Now, yeah.
now, they were brand new. The tribes of Israel hadn't even been formed yet.
This is pre
Yeah, they just.
Torah,
pre-rule,
pre-commandments.
When it's started.
Pre-commandments. Oh,
Didn't matter
fine.
who gave birth.
All right.
Lay with a goat if
Okay.
you wanted to.
Thanks
then.
Says the president. I'm not sure.
But
I'm-
the,
It's in the 613
Yeah,
commandments.
they're credited with these, Bilhah and Zilpah are credited with these 4 boys,
Mhm.
but
We don't get to hear their
we don't
perspective
hear
at
their
all.
voice at all. They don't even get to name the kids.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the kids are still basically just the experience of Rachel and Leah.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
Mhm.
Also, I think when they come in to play is interesting. If we look at, what were you going to say, Beth, before we do this?
Leah's punishment was that she wasn't beautiful. Rachel was
somebody's eyes.
punished, well, but Rachel was punished later by not being able to have children. Except she was able to have children,
But
so.
punished for
Yeah.
what?
Well, what I think is that she probably wrote the narrative of 7 years. And it's almost like God made her wait 7 years to have a baby
Mm.
because she made Jacob wait.
That's
Interesting.
interesting.
I don't know. Okay. I don't
But
even know.
she didn't make
You
Jacob
should
wait.
What?
Lavan made Jacob wait.
But she wrote
Oh,
the
she
thing
was-
where
yeah.
she said, by the way, my dad's gonna trick you.
And
And
I'm in
maybe
on it.
this was her craftiness.
I'm
We
in
don't
on
know.
it.
We don't know. Yeah, but could be. Richie, can you say more about that? God controlling the whole narrative, Rachel not conceiving at the end, God remember Rachel. What do you mean?
I mean,
Say
it,
more.
it all started when it said that God noticed that, he saw that Rachel was, that Leah was the hated one. And he allowed her to have children and not Leah, not Rachel. And she wasn't able to, but then at the end, he remembered her. So it is sort of
It's almost
some
like
kind of drama, telenovela, whatever, that, I mean, it's all, I mean, she had to sit there waiting and sulk, whatever.
It's like they had turns.
all God's
Leah got
hand.
married first, and she got the kids first. Rachel got married second, and she had the children second, and then they kind of went back and forth.
Yeah, but it wasn't that simple because Rachel was really tortured that she didn't have children for so many years, and it killed her watching Leah give birth to all these boys and children.
That goes back to Beth's point.
Mark has a question.
Mark, yeah.
I take away from this that Leah was just a horrible, horrible person. Her sister did this. No, I mean, her sister did this wonderful thing for her. Yet she has 3 daughters, and it's all about me, 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 until finally, after the fortune says, this one's for God. But then as soon as Rachel has one through her surrogate, Leah's jealous, and ultimately Leah has more kids again. So obviously this thing about, oh, this is no longer about me, it's for God, that went away because now she's willing to have more, more for herself, if you will. So she just seems repeatedly to be self-involved isn't the right term, but it's all about her and her issues, not that of her sister who sacrificed, et cetera, et cetera.
Interesting.
He's
Where's
very-
Jacob? Yeah, where's Jacob with all these 10 kids? I mean,
He's
he just
having a-
sitting there.
He's yelling
Oh,
at
He's
Rachel.
having a
agreed.
good time.
Considering he didn't love her, he sure slept with her a lot. So yeah, he could
Yeah.
have said, I'm not going to be with her ever. So no question.
We don't know about the other maids.
Right.
But hey, listen, it ended up with us having the 12 tribes, and maybe that was part of the ultimate plan from a higher source, that you have to have all these many women conceiving and having all these children to the same man to create the tribes of Israel.
So there is a source, and we'll read it next, actually, that Leah did know that there were supposed to be 12 sons.
Oh.
And so, and Mark, I think that source might speak to you a little bit, but we're not there yet. I want us to look at kind of the arcs that Rachel and Leah, like what are they going through? How is this experience transforming for them? So I think you just mentioned it, Mark, that we see Leah's first 3 sons, she names them based on her feelings about her husband, right?
Right.
And maybe he'll love me, maybe this will bring him closer to me, maybe this is what I need to do. And then she seems to have a shift in perspective when she gets to the 4th son, and it's not anymore about Jacob, but now it's about being thankful for what she has.
I would push back.
Right?
It's not about Jacob. It's about her. She wants her husband's love. She wants her husband's love.
Right. Yes, that's what I
But-
mean.
but-
Like she's
okay,
trying
okay.
to get.
I'm
trying to
defending
get
the
that,
man's
and then-
perspective here.
and then there seems to be a shift in her experience, right? Because what is a woman's worth? If beyond her beauty, what does a woman do? She has babies, right? And she has sons. We don't just care about babies, we care about sons. And she has 4 sons already. I mean, that's pretty good.
So that's transforming her sense of self, and then
Right.
she's gained confidence and stature,
Okay.
and so she can change the way she feels about it.
Yeah, so Leah's finally feeling a bit positive about her situation. And then boom, we're taken straight to Rachel, where she is
On down.
desperate, right? Here she is, beautiful, shapely, the beloved wife. And she is having a rough time of it, right? She's envying her sister, not because her sister might, have the favor of Jacob now because of the kids, but because of the children, right? If we look at their 2 experiences, Leah's experience is about Jacob. Rachel's is not about Jacob at all. Maybe that's because she's confident in their relationship. Maybe that's because the relationship never meant as much to her as it meant to Leah. We don't know, but she is desperate for children to the point where she brings another woman into the situation so that she might be able to have children through somebody else, right? Bilhah then, has no voice. What happens then, though, in verse 9?
Well, in 8, really, too.
Okay, 8. Okay, yes, 8. So when we were reading this, you had a very strong reaction to verse 8. So do you want to talk about that? Verse 8 was, then
she didn't
Rachel,
read that.
no, but I thought you reacted to it. Beth.
Oh,
The
yeah.
whole- the
I
whole
mean, I
rest
just
of it.
thought it was hilarious that she's like, since I fought with my sister over this whole thing, I'm gonna name him this, and she's still not recognizing God in it, in the naming of her finally born son, that God doesn't have anything to do with it. And even later, we realize how far spread apart the children are when Ruvain is bringing these nightshades or whatever we call it, mandrakes. He's able to be in the field. So like there's a year. So that's where I got the 7 years from, that maybe it was a considerable amount of time that
Yeah.
it was a master plan.
What is-
Punishment.
What does Naphtali mean? Richie, since you were translating Hebrew before?
Oh,
Can't
you're
hear-
on mute. You're on mute.
Like to be twinkled or like all.
Aha, so that, okay,
Wow. So
interesting.
wrestling
Yes.
would make
And-
sense.
And that seemed like that was, to me, the first time that it became a super competitive the sisterhood, competitive fighting, feeling competitive with your
Mhm.
sister and competing to have more children
Yep.
with the sister versus just Rachel not being able to conceive. It's like, it was a battle between her and her sister in this case versus a battle between herself and not being able to conceive.
Can we understand that, though?
Sure.
Is it
Yeah.
understandable?
Yeah, sure.
Right? The one thing you want children, and here you're just watching your sister. The way that the text presents it, we don't know how much time is passing in between, but we have to think like, how many years, this was a span of how many years, one after the other, boom, 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 boom,
Like 8 or 9 years.
8 or 9 years, maybe a little
Yeah.
bit less,
Yeah.
that's hard. That is hard to watch for sure for anybody who's struggling. But when this is so close to you, in your face all the time, so we can understand why that would be on her mind. But then what's happening to Leah? What happens to Leah's feeling a bit confident, a bit more comfortable?
A little jealous. Then she got jealous again.
But we saw that with Hadar too. I mean, you
Needed more
get
babies.
comfortable in your shoes when you're able to give the gift, and they think that that's all you need from me, but it's not.
So I think that's one understanding we can have. But what if we also have the understanding that she knew there were supposed to be 12,
Oh, that's right.
right? And she's not having any kids anymore, she thinks, right?
How does she know that they're gonna have 12?
That's if she had some sort of prophecy.
Ah.
That's a midrash. We don't know,
Okay.
but it's interesting to read the story from that perspective too. You know, like if she
Okay.
had that information, how does that change our understanding of this verse? If she
Sure,
didn't,
she says, I want to give my sister a chance, so I hope I have a girl, so it's almost like she's wrestling with her own, her internal struggle is I love my sister and I want her to share in the fruits of our labors, literally. But I also want to be the one who's loved.
And still have a little one up, I have more kids because that raises her stature because she's not the good looking one.
Right,
Right.
right.
One
So
that's
she's
chosen.
she's
Gotcha.
got some struggles.
Yeah.
right, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
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 Okay, so then Leah has 2 children through Zilpah, right? And she's happy. These kids have happy names. And then we have this crazy story about the mandrakes. And what I want to look at is how they are, both of these women relating to and talking about their husband.
Yeah. Like he was the possession almost. Like,
Right.
Property.
he needs to go to, if you want those, and he's gonna come to me tonight.
Right. It's very transactional. And then Leah's seeing him in the field and saying, no, I hired you.
Mhm.
With you're coming to me tonight.
Mhm.
He like, if we there are 2 mentions of Jacob in this, or I mean, they're talking about Jacob's son, but like his experience first when Rachel is having this really emotional, desperate moment, and he yells at her, "Am I in the place of God who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb?" It's a strange reaction to have towards your beloved wife who is having a hard time, right? And then to this situation with the mandrakes where he's not even, he has all of a sudden no voice. He's just like, the women are in charge of what's happening with him and where he's going and what the situation is, and he's just following their lead. He's a pawn in their whole situation, right?
Oh,
But then-
mandrake is a
in
serious
verse-
thing.
Well, tell us.
She Googled it. Mandrake was used as a soporific, a sleep-inducing and pain-killing plant for many hundreds of years. It's a powerful narcotic, emetic, sedative, and hallucinogen.
Oh, my God.
They're on LSD.
So that's
Even-
why Joseph had the dream. Sorry.
Mandrake is in folk medicine, and it's in the occult of modern witchcraft.
Does it say anything about it being like an aphrodisiac or having like fertility properties?
It can make you die,
Yeah, it does say it could be
poisonous to death.
It's early LSD.
Okay,
Oh my
so
goodness.
let's
That's
just say
crazy.
it's possible
Is
that the
that what you
mandrakes-
guys have in the back there? Is that your?
Marcy just Googled it. Well, maybe.
Because if it's on the internet.
Don't
it's
tell anyone.
for-
Is it Wikipedia?
No,
I don't, this
just
is,
Google.
I don't know, just
'Cause it's
Google.
all
It has a long history of medicinal use, and one of the oldest and most common uses was as a fertility
There
aid.
you go.
Okay, so
In Genesis, the first book of the Old Testament, some Goy wrote this. 'Cause
Okay.
Jacob's wives, the sisters Leah and Rachel, compete to provide him with children with the help of mandrake.
compete to provide him with children. That is the narrative. Do we think that they're competing with each other? Do you think that that
No.
that
There's
the women
jealousy there, but I don't think they were.
are they
Quote
competing with
anything.
each other? Do you think? Richie says yes.
because they
Leah's
needed
competing
his
at least.
time- They needed his time with them in the tent. So he couldn't be everywhere all the time. But then
Huh?
on verse 15, it sort of contradicts everything we've been talking about, because Leah is claiming that Rachel is taking away her husband. So if it all
Yeah.
started else a different way, then why is Leah claiming that Rachel is the one that stole him?
Where does that come from? That's kind of out of the blue, right, Mark?
And the whole narrative of the prophecy of 12 children seems to go away because again, Leah wants to have the children. If the number 12 is magic, she would give Leah the mandrakes, whatever, just to get to 12, but she wants it for herself. So again, it's a selfish matter, a
Wow,
competition. It's not
you
about
have
the
a very
12.
strong opinion about Leia.
I was
Yeah,
just
oh,
gonna say,
yeah,
Mark,
oh,
you
yeah.
have a
From
really
this.
strong bias towards Rachel. My goodness.
Yeah, just because she's hot.
Shawnee says it's because she's hot.
Michelle's Hebrew name, Rachel, just kidding.
Sorry.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so all of a sudden it's very interesting. That line, which is seemingly like a bit of a throwaway line, seems like something that, you know, this feeling that maybe she is, you know, just repressed for a long time, and all of a sudden it comes out about, you know, Rachel's taking her husband away. But she seems to be fine, and you know, it seems to be fine for her to kind of trade the mandrakes for a night with Jacob. So maybe this is still some of her underlying, what am I trying to say?
Guilt,
No,
Conflict.
no, her just
feeling,
her not
feeling
not feeling
confident.
confident
Yeah.
in her relationship, that, you know, this
Oh, because she shared it.
this comes out for her to get another night with him. You know, that's what she wants, right? She wants more of Jacob, more time with Jacob. She wants to just, you know, get this reassurance from Jacob that he wants her and loves her, and so time maybe makes that okay for her. I don't know.
I didn't actually
Um,
believe the whole part about the two sisters with the two brothers, but these two Sukim actually tie it to the story of Esav and Jacob when he came with the stew, because he came from the field and he was willing to do anything for the stew. And here Rachel's coming by and she sees the plant and she wants it. So it ties the two stories together. There's a
Yeah,
similarity.
what a beautiful take. You should write that and submit it somewhere.
She's amazing.
That's great.
well done, Richie.
Okay, so then Leah starts having more babies again, right? We have this verse 21. Afterwards, she bore a daughter and named her Dinah.
With no commentary.
No context, right? What are her feelings about it? It's just a girl. Presumably there might have been other girls that had been born during this time. We don't know, but Dinah is mentioned. Dinah is going to come up in this next source that we read again. And then we have the Rachel verses where she finally gets a baby. And what's the name of the baby? What is her hopes and dreams are just that she'll have another one, right? And then we know when she has Benjamin, that is when she dies. She dies in childbirth. So, you know, it's very interesting thinking about what her wish is and then what that causes for her. But you know what you were saying before, Beth, I think you were saying it with you know, that we don't get a lot of the like emotional context of any character in the Torah, let alone women. And then here we have this huge piece of block of text that is really just an expression of their emotional experience. It happens to manifest itself in the names of the children and who become the tribes. And maybe that's why we know it, you know, because these boys are important to the continuity of the Jewish people and, you know, to the narrative, but never, you know, whatever it is, we have this whole block of text that gives us a lot of insight into who these women were and what their emotional experience was and what their life was like, and the things that they felt they needed to do. And I just think it's fascinating
It is.
and very, very rich.
But each of these comments on the names are the definition of the boys'
Yes.
names, right? Okay.
Yeah. Okay, I want to just move on because
The next paragraph is,
yes, so Marcy, you want to read it?
she already read ahead. She's.
Yeah, well,
I just want one.
No, I don't want, Marcy, I don't want you to read this. Mark, I would like you to read this because this is your commentary, okay?
She's
Let
her finger at you.
Yes.
Go for it.
Okay. In Leah's hour of need, Rachel performed the greatest act of self-sacrifice by relinquishing her own destined husband in order to spare Leah's degradation. As her swindling father veiled Leah, replacing Rachel as Jacob's bride, Rachel not only remained silent, but aided her sister with the deception. She did this simply so that her sister would not feel acutely embarrassed. Leah too.
Okay, so we read something similar to that before, but now let's keep going.
Okay. Leah too, despite experiencing the pain of being Jacob's unloved wife, whose only consolation was bearing his children, demonstrated keen feelings of sisterhood and sensitivity to Rachel by praying for her to have a child. Pregnant with her seventh child, so sympathetic after 7. That's not written there. Pregnant with her 7th child, Leah prayed that the fetus be female so that Rachel too would have her allotted share of the tribes of Israel. Boy, she's a real giver, isn't she?
Marcy says she's bipolar.
Marcy is gone right now. She's just devastated
Well, I mean-
right now.
So why did you want me to read this?
Because it's a bit redeeming for
She
Leah.
prayed for her sister to have another baby. She prayed for her baby to be a girl, which I guess was a horrible. Shonda to have.
Praying for her.
Okay, she knows
And for her.
if
I
we're gonna
rest my
presume,
case, Your Honor.
if we're gonna presume, according to the Midrash, that Leah knows there are to be 12 sons, there are 10 already, right? So she's pregnant.
No.
If she,
And Rachel hasn't had any.
and
of
Rachel
them.
hasn't had any kids,
So she wants Rachel to
if
have the
she has
two
another
left to
boy, then there's only one more shot of Rachel contributing to the 12 sons, the 12 tribes. And so she prays that her baby will be a girl. So this seemingly throwaway line in the text, afterwards she bore a daughter and named her Dinah. And we don't get the context of even her feelings about that, but this text kind of fleshes that out a little bit, that she wanted the girl so that Rachel can also be part of producing the future of the Jewish people, right?
So that's redeeming, Mark.
It is redeeming.
Well, okay.
About it now?
That last line too, though, it's interesting to me. She said, the very last line there. So Rachel too would have her allotted share, meaning her allotted share is 1 out of 12. That doesn't seem very allotted. It's a share, but again, boy, isn't she generous? I mean, that's not a whole lot of a contribution to the tribes of Israel.
But it was Joseph.
It was the favorite
It was
child,
the Joseph.
She gave birth to the special one.
the favorite one, the dream maker, the dream interpreter,
The
Yeah,
owner
but she
of the
wanted her to
coat.
have a girl. She got a boy, but it wasn't even the way she wanted it to be. She wanted her to
No,
have
no,
one.
she prayed for
No.
herself.
She prayed for herself to have a girl so that
Oh,
Rachel would
okay.
have a
Oh,
girl.
okay. I misunderstood that. Okay.
Okay.
Either way, she still doesn't come across to me as very sisterly. We talked at the very beginning about this
I love it.
being a sisterhood compact of let's do this together. And seems to me when Rachel gets into it, it's all about Rachel, her progeny. From my perspective.
All about.
From your perspective.
Keep going.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's
From my perspective.
I broke it.
Lost in space again.
But the synagogue's got to do something about this, because, I mean,
It hasn't happened this badly usually, but yeah.
Tanakh,
It's very
it happens,
frustrating.
when we have Tanakh class, it happens.
Oh,
During
does it?
Tanakh
Okay.
class on Thursday
It
morning.
It happens on Thursday.
Often, all through the class.
It happens.
Okay,
when
I'll
we-
let Rachel, I'll let Rachel know.
They
I
have
didn't-
to, and they have to, add on, what's it called?
A boost or
And the
whatever.
Wi-Fi boost out with the Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi boost, okay.
We've said it.
No, we lost him totally.
We
Yeah.
completely lost them.
Oh, they're
Okay,
not
no.
on Zoom. We have
No.
that problem when we teach, that there's not, we can't,
Okay.
like in the middle of the day, we're
Yeah.
stuck, we can't do things.
Yeah, you say like the iPads constantly disconnect, and I'm not sure what it is.
I don't know what they can do, but I will talk to Chris and about that. I'm writing
So
that
you
down.
can't, I mean, like at home, when you like extend your Wi-Fi, so you could put probably there are tons of companies that have gigantic Wi-Fi's, they're stronger Wi-Fi.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll let him know.
Rachel, tell him.
They're there.
Oh, there
Are they
they are.
back? You're back.
we
We
missed
lo-
you
we-
guys.
We lost you right after you all agreed with what I said.
Yeah, it kicked us completely off and we.
No, we've been off for a while
Yeah.
though.
They didn't want to hear us.
Richie, in the next teacher meeting, you need to tell them we need better internet.
I've been saying that for years.
Well, now the
Been there,
president
done
knows
that.
it.
All right, thanks,
President knows
Richie.
because the president couldn't have a board meeting because of it the other day.
Okay, so let's just go to this last text. We're gonna read it in two different lines, and I could not get this formatting of the first paragraph to look like the rest. I don't know what happened there.
It's Google
But
Docs.
I
Just
really-
blame
it's-
Google Docs.
I was really angry about it. I tried for a while. Okay, so here's Rabbi Sylvia Rothschild's take, which I think is very interesting. Lavan has not behaved properly in the matter of their marriage. He has treated them, his children, as possessions and not as family, and the women are not happy. He has put them in an impossible situation, which they navigate as gracefully as possible, given their conflicting roles and motivations. So, what? No, not me. She is making Lavan the bad guy, right? That Lavan is the one that put them in this situation, basically, and the way that they act after this situation is just a bunch of humans doing the best they can in a really uncomfortable situation that they are just stuck in. So
She doesn't mention Jacob here at all. She said the women are not happy. What about the poor guy?
right.
Poor
The
guy.
poor guy had
Poor
had
guy.
Fine.
Do you know how many
His
mouths
life
he
was
feeds with
tense.
all those kids?
He has a field.
a lot of money.
And he
Karen.
leaves a very rich
For working
man.
Was
for
very,
15
he was very wealthy.
Yeah. And he's getting it every night.
But this
That
is,
you just did a 180, your opinion of this whole thing.
it's egalitarian on my part.
I do
I'm a true conservative Jew.
I do think that Jacob is also a victim here.
100%.
Whether or not it works out for him,
Seems to work out.
right?
Seems to work out. How many, he's 12 sons and we don't know how
Seriously.
many daughters. We only know one is named.
Right.
But
But
there
I
could have been
do-
others.
I do think like it all started. Lavan, it is his fault. Like he was not behaving properly.
Although he might have done what
And
was called
fathers did whatever they need to do to,
or acceptable.
So what do we think? Do we think these women are, if this is our paradigm of sisters in the Torah, what's your take on them? Is there love there? Is there just competition over a man there? Or is it a bit more real and complex that there are lots of things going on and you cannot boil it down simply to saying the narrative is about two sisters competing over a man, two sisters feeling jealous of each other?
But also taking care of each other.
Right. I don't think you can say that they were just jealous because to this point here, they were just doing the best that they could.
Yep.
And navigating it as gracefully as possible to, help each other, but also like your common human nature to be jealous and to compete over things.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a natural reaction.
right, life is complicated and we're human.
Right.
And we're all different.
So we are supposed to, all of the characters in the Bible are supposed teach us a lot of lessons. None of them are perfect. They're all very murky in their kind of morality and the decisions they make.
Oh, my goodness.
It's our workout.
We were close. Back.
We're just friendly.
Okay, that's it for me for tonight.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Hopefully they'll come back.
They're trying to convince us to come in person.
So do you think it has anything to do with just the social hall?
No, it's the whole building.
Oh,
Yeah, it's the building.
So they
When
need
when
to
we were
get a
doing services
better,
on Zoom, we didn't have problems.
Oh, there
when
they
what
are.
was on,
You're back.
No,
But you're muted.
You're
You're
muted.
muted.
By the time they unmute, then we're gonna lose them again.
Okay.
We're back.
Thank you.
We're
Thank you for
back.
bearing with us.
No,
We're just
sorry.
gonna finish. We're gonna finish this up. I'm wrapping it up right now.
Talk fast.
I don't know what I was talking about, but that we're supposed to be we learn from these people. We can keep coming back and learn new insights and lessons from these human beings that we're dealing with rough situations, and that maybe we can identify with at different parts of our lives as we access the text based on where we are in our lives, in our world at the moment, and how we can relate to these characters. And they're so rich, and there's so much here, that this is why these stories have been so compelling for thousands of years. Because every time we come to them, we learn new things about them, and we learn things about ourselves through these stories. So I'm just going to read this last paragraph that was also from Rabbi Rothschild. The women in the Bible are indeed active in getting the narrative moving. They sometimes cause it to take an unusual path. They sometimes second guess God. They sometimes even nudge God into long delayed action. But this is not devious or unscrupulous or any negative connotation. The women in the Bible are active, creative, powerful, and thoughtful. They hear the voice of God and they see the hand of God. That the text records their actions, albeit with the spotlight frequently turned away, is important. And it is important that in this generation, we return the spotlight to those players who are not always seen on the stage, for they are our models and our matriarchs, and they deserve our attention. So I think
I didn't read ahead on that one.
this is, this sums up, I think, what we've been doing in our time together perfectly. That we need to give these women voices. We need to return to these stories. We need to understand the context and the world that they were operating in. And we can admire them for what they were trying to do within the social constraints of the time, often fulfilling the word of God, often being the ones that kind of nudge us or the narrative or whatever's happening in the right direction to fulfill the word of God. And they don't get, I think, the attention that they deserve. And that's why we're here together doing this.
I love this.
I love this. Like,
great.
I want to frame this last.
Really good.
Yeah. Love this.
Can I just say one thing?
Please.
It's such a story about these two sisters and Laban, the father. There's no mention of a mother.
So we don't know if the mother is alive or not. We don't hear about the mother.
We don't even know her name.
Right. Yes, Mark.
So I know when we bless boys, we do Ephraim and Manasseh. And I may have this wrong, but when I asked why that was, it was explained to me that they were sort of the first males or brothers that were worthwhile, that our forefathers sinned and weren't perfect. But yet we do Sarah, Rachel, Rebecca, and Leah. And at least for these two, they seem equally unworthy as some of our patriarchs in terms of being emulated or blessing our children. I mean, why are we, not why, but it doesn't seem quite the same. They seem equally flawed as the matriarchs that are skipped over in that context. I don't know if you have any insight
I'm
to
gonna
that.
beg to differ. I'm gonna beg to differ on that.
No, that's fine. That's why I just raised it up. And Gilda has her hand up too.
Oh, Gilda, go. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I never heard of it that they were less flawed, but that they were in the Egyptian society and they still kept their Jewish roots. They still kept to their heritage and they didn't assimilate.
Ephraim and
That's
Manasseh
where I
you're talking
thought
about.
of them.
Right.
Yes.
But I would have assumed that we would have therefore blessed our boys over Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, blah, blah, blah. And I may have that wrong. I don't know how Talia's inside or anybody does, but anyway.
What were you going to say?
You were gonna say.
I was gonna say the introduction of our foremothers allows us the complexity to be women. And without that extra layer, your traditional male-female marriage and parenting styles of just male and female, I'm not talking about other representations, isn't allowed to have space. And if we even go to like why 10 men have to be present in a minion, it's because they were deceitful and lied, but the women had each other's backs and they don't have to have they don't have to have
That's big.
they're just allowed that space for complexity and layers and things like that. So it allows for the emotion of women to be powerful in that, because the physical strength of the males is what's mentioned so often in their stoicness and just their ability to not question things and just do what God says. The women are the ones that question things, and I think that's what allows us to not be able to make up our minds and not know what we want for dinner, and that allows us the freedom to breathe in this space, I think.
Well, I wish Michael was here for that.
Lovely.
I think
No,
Bill
that makes sense.
Sweet.
I'm not questioning you anymore, Beth. I'm done. I'm good.
Any other questions or comments?
Thank you so much, Talia.
Thank you.
Wait, so, but I have a question, like you mentioned that I didn't know about the premonition or whatever that Leah has about having the 12 sons.
Yeah.
It was, so do we know how that came to? Was it a dream or how does she, there was,
I didn't see the midrash of it.
Richie, do you know?
Richie, are you raising your hand? Or are you showing us something?
yeah, how's your thing going over there?
You're on mute.
We can't hear you.
I was just showing Rachel what I was doing. Sorry for bothering.
Oh,
sorry.
She's knitting. I saw her get it
It's
out.
like holding up the secret of
Crocheting.
the answer to the secret
Yes,
of
is the
life.
web of Leah's
I
premonition
couldn't
and
find that
okay, but
midrash,
just
so
so know about.
I just read it in other things,
so
but I
cool.
didn't like
Okay.
find it specifically.
And how much later was Benjamin born after all this?
He was the only one born in the land of Canaan.
Right, so
Then-
after this, they leave, like immediately after this, they leave.
Mhm.
And then when they're on their way back.
Okay, and Rachel dies in time.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So Talia, we know you've covered the matriarchs per se, but we're hoping you'll continue further with other women of the Bible perhaps next spring,
Yes.
if you're willing, your
Yes.
schedule allows, or next year. But this has been a wonderful program and we
Yeah, I love
very
it.
much appreciate it, but we're hoping it's not over. And who you choose next is your call, but it's been a
We
wonderful
go in
program.
order, I guess. Miriam.
Thank you so
Miriam.
much.
Great. Well, we'll
Gotta
work on
go.
some days. We'll work on some days in the spring and let everybody know.
Okay,
Thank you all.
Thank you
Okay.
for bearing with
Good
us.
night.
Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you all
Bye.
for everything. Thanks for
Night, night.
participating, everybody. Good night.
Yeah.
Good night.
Thank you.